In February 1965, after Malcolm X was assassinated, bullet holes were visible behind the stage at New York's Audubon Ballroom, with punctures in walls and curtains showing the attack's violence. People wearing a cangue appear in this scene from China. The cangue was a heavy, usually rectangular wooden frame locked around the neck as a form of punishment and public shaming. In 1939 in the United States, a man balanced on a wooden plank at the edge of a skyscraper, an image striking for its height and the man's calm above the dizzying backdrop. In 1945 on Okinawa, a striking image known as the Jeep Graveyard showed rows of damaged or disabled military vehicles after intense operations. In 1932, a factory worker applied luminous paint to small parts such as watch or instrument dials, using materials that glowed in the dark for low-light readability. Tambo, an Aboriginal Australian, was part of a group of 9 recruited in 1882 by Irish showman Robert A. Cunningham and taken from Australia to the United States for public exhibitions of Indigenous Australian culture. On December 28, 1943, troops trained at the British Army's 10th Mining School to handle mines and booby traps, blind, using a screen that blocked their view of their hands to simulate real-world conditions requiring extreme care. In the 1950s, Betty Page, the queen of pinups, appears with her sister Goldie in a relaxed family moment that shows a more private side of the famous model. In 1933, in Kharkiv, Ukraine, striking scenes revealed the hard reality of a severe food shortage, with residents shown lying in the streets in extreme conditions. During Bangladesh's 1971 War of Independence, many documented reports described severe human rights abuses, and in some cases, cultural and religious practices were used to identify specific groups, including Hindu communities. A car was hit with 3 million volts in a Westinghouse electric lightning test in Pittsburgh around the 1940s. To demonstrate electrical effects on vehicles and test safety limits. A woman with an elongated skull was photographed in Central Africa in 1955, the result of intentional cranial shaping, a cultural practice found among some groups in different regions. During World War II, thousands of women took active roles in Yugoslav resistance movements as couriers, nurses, and armed fighters alongside men. On June 3, 1945, a German civilian looked up at a large portrait of Joseph Stalin in central Berlin, a public display reflecting Soviet presence and influence after fighting ended in Europe. The Old Vennel, close near High Street in Glasgow, was photographed by Thomas Annan in 1868 as part of his commission to document the city's poorest districts during the harsh conditions of rapid industrial revolution growth. A city bus and several cars are stuck in flooding from heavy summer rains in Kyiv, Ukraine. with water covering much of the street and halting traffic. In 1962, Lee Harvey Oswald was photographed at home with his wife, Marina, and their daughter, a quiet family scene with simple clothes and calm expressions. Citizens in the town of Boren, Belgium, wait near a viaduct in 1933 for a possible appearance of the Virgin Mary. After school children nearby reported seeing a glowing figure they identified as the Virgin the day before. During the 1964 Winter Games in Innsbruck, Austria, Austrian soldiers were mobilized to haul snow onto the competition courses because mild weather left the mountains short on snow and ice. In 1968, Douglas Engelbart gave one of the first public demos of technologies that would define modern computing in San Francisco, debuting the mouse, a graphical interface, overlapping windows, hypertext, and real-time text editing. In 1966, astronaut Buzz Aldrin took the first space selfie during NASA's Gemini 12 mission, using a handheld camera with Earth behind him and his helmet reflecting the spacecraft. On August 13, 1969, Apollo 11 astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins were honored with an open-car parade down LaSalle Street in downtown Chicago, as thousands celebrated the first crewed moon landing. In 1939, General Motors and chemical company Röhm and Haas, which developed plexiglass in 1933, unveiled the transparent Ghost car, an experimental model built on a Pontiac Deluxe 6 chassis. Bobby Gibb became the first woman to run the Boston Marathon in 1966. Women were not officially allowed, so she had no bib and slipped in from the crowd at the start. The first McDonald's restaurant, photographed in 1948, in San Bernardino, California, founded by brothers Richard and Maurice McDonald, features a sign noting U.S. government inspected meat to reassure customers. In 1913, workers assembled a Ford Model T at the Highland Park plant in Michigan, the pioneering site for Henry Ford's moving assembly line that transformed industrial production. The Red Barn, Boeing's first production building on Seattle's Duwamish River, began serving as a manufacturing facility in 1917 when the company was still called Boeing Airplane Company. In 1958, Disneyland visitors explored the innovative House of the Future in Tomorrowland, a structure made almost entirely of plastic. In 1962, at the opening of a Piggly Wiggly in Encino, California, cash registers stood ready and clerks smiled for the first customers in a clean, decorated store that celebrated the modern self-service concept. In the 1940s, the Zoot Suit stood out among young people in U.S. urban communities, with long jackets and wide shoulders, high-waisted, full-leg trousers tapered at the ankles, often paired with hats and chains. People gather at the Gateways Club in Chelsea, London, a landmark in UK LGBTQ+ history, founded around 1931, and known from the 1940s, 1950s, as one of the few women-only clubs especially for lesbians. In 1968, women staged a notable protest against the Miss America pageant in Atlantic City, New Jersey, a symbolic moment of the era's feminist movement. Joseph Stalin, leader of the Soviet Union for nearly 3 decades, died on March 5, 1953, and was given a grand public funeral in Red Square, reflecting his central role in Soviet politics. In 1965, Pelé stood with Soviet goalkeeper Lev Yashin, a symbolic meeting of 2 soccer legends and a moment of mutual respect. In 1979, Michael Jackson was photographed in London dressed as Charlie Chaplin, paying tribute to the tramp with a bowler hat, cane, dark suit, and the trademark mustache. A 1931 photo shows Greta Garbo as Mata Hari during production of the film, with elaborate costume and intense expression. The movie, released in 1931, became one of Garbo's major hits. In 1940, Mexican artist Frida Kahlo was photographed painting in bed during a long recovery after a serious accident, spending nearly a year resting through severe pain and multiple surgeries while continuing to create. Marilyn Monroe was photographed after a 1956 press conference in London while filming The Prince and the Showgirl with Laurence Olivier, drawing intense media and public attention. A Titanic survivor signs an autograph for a woman years after the 1912 disaster, a quiet, symbolic moment that shows how the tragedy stayed in public memory. In 1971, on the U.S. set of The Godfather, actor Robert Duvall was photographed holding lines for Marlon Brando, a small glimpse of the collaboration behind the film's memorable scenes. In 1964, Frank Sinatra was photographed stepping off a helicopter in Hollywood with a drink in hand, dressed impeccably and exuding his relaxed, confident style. A well-known figure is seen at a Long Island Beach summer home with friend David Rothman, a local department store owner, in a quiet, informal seaside moment. In 1906, the children of Tsar Nicholas II were photographed in a formal portrait: Olga, Tatiana, Maria, Anastasia, and the youngest, Alexei, dressed elegantly and posing seriously. A leaning monolith resting on its base was photographed by Alfred Maudslay in Copan, Honduras, showing an ancient carved structure partly tipped, yet still firmly set in the ground. Copan is a major Maya site, known for its stelae, temples, and detailed inscriptions. People stand at the entrance to the nunnery at Chichen Itza, a key building in the ancient Maya city on the Yucatan Peninsula, known for its detailed facade and stone decorations showing faces and symbolic figures. Some of the earliest color photographs in England were made in the 1920s, using the autochrome Lumiere process, developed by the Lumiere brothers in the early 20th century, and among the first successful color methods. A lamplighter at work in 1898 uses a long pole to light a gas street lamp from the era before widespread electric lighting. Lamplighters lit the lamps at dusk and put them out at dawn. In 1900, Canyon de Chelly in northeastern Arizona was photographed to show its towering rock formations and the long presence of the Navajo people who have lived there for centuries. This 1920 photo from Jerusalem shows a sign reading "The Palestine German Bank" in the background, capturing an early moment in the British Mandate after Ottoman rule ended. A parade takes place near the Kremlin walls in Moscow, with troops marching in formation through Red Square carrying red flags as crowds watch, and the State Historical Museum in the background bearing a large portrait typical of Soviet-era ceremonies. In 1977, Moscow's Kalinin Avenue, now Novy Arbat, was photographed as a showcase of 1970s urban energy, with modern residential blocks, Soviet-style commercial buildings, and bright signs. Pedestrians look at a decorated shop window in Moscow from the Soviet era, featuring a stylized Ferris wheel and carefully arranged children's toys. Moscow's well-known Novodevichy Convent offers broad green spaces for meeting, strolling, and leisure. The caption, "Chicks Chilling with Books," in Moscow's Novodevichy Convent, adds a light, informal note to a peaceful, everyday scene. Moscow's Novospassky Monastery is among the city's oldest, dating to the 14th century, rebuilt and expanded over time with significant religious and historical roles. Ostankino Palace in Moscow is an 18th century estate once used as the Sheremetev family's summer residence, known for richly decorated wooden architecture and one of Russia's earliest private theaters. In 1971 in Azusa, California, a young mother feeds her baby at a school for teen moms, set up to provide educational and social support for students balancing motherhood and classes. In 1981, the Concorde was photographed landing on the island of St. Martin, descending over Maho Beach just above beachgoers, a rare and dramatic sight for the supersonic airliner. In the 1950s, a family gathers in the living room to watch a children's TV program, all facing a prominent screen that captured the era's excitement over television. In 1966, Bruce Lee was photographed, teaching his son Brandon some martial arts moves, a warm father-son moment that blended technique, discipline, and affection. Lee was the creator of Jeet Kune Do, focused on efficiency and freedom of movement. In 1919, a Studebaker automobile was pictured in a repair shop, being checked or adjusted amid period tools and parts. Studebaker was a leading U.S. car maker in the early 20th century. The facade shows a bold sign for Sig Klein Fat Men's Shop at 3rd Avenue and 52nd Street in New York City, advertising big and tall clothing with the line underwear, shirts, pajamas, etc. to fit any size man. A slot machine at the Mint Casino in Las Vegas in 1958 captures the city's golden era, when the Fremont Street venue drew crowds with flashy style, neon lights, live music, and then modern games. The Beaumont Drive entrance to Frank Sinatra's 1960s home in Beverly Hills reflected his classic, low-key style, mixing understated luxury with the era's modern charm. In 1963, actor Steve McQueen was photographed with his wife, Nyla Adams, in a casual, personal moment, both smiling and showing the strong bond of their early marriage. In 1988, Nicolas Cage was photographed with his father, August Coppola, at an event, showing a close father-son bond within their distinct yet art-connected paths. In 1951, at a U.S. hospital, a man dressed as the Easter Bunny visited a patient, bringing a bit of humor and kindness to the hospital setting. Twin girls in homemade costumes pose in the 1930s, their carefully sewn outfits showing the creativity and care families used for school events, parades, and special occasions. A girl brushes her hair in front of a mirror in the 1920s, a simple, intimate scene showing everyday self-care and the calm of a daily ritual. An Aboriginal boy poses with his pet, Kangarnyi, a young kangaroo, in an October 1955 National Geographic photo from Australia that highlights the close bond between Indigenous peoples and nature. In the 1930s in Deauville, a stylish French seaside town, a woman wears polka dot beach pajamas, a comfortable yet fashionable look, popular among women at upscale resorts. Passengers on one of the first transcontinental flights in the United States appear here, seated in a basic cabin with small windows and narrow seats, reflecting early commercial aviation standards. Flying saucer-style gas stations began appearing in the United States in the 1950s and 1960s, with futuristic designs featuring circular canopies and raised structures that looked like spacecraft. In the 1980s, riding the New York City subway was daily life for millions, despite its reputation for being tough, with graffiti-covered cars, dim lighting, and clear signs of urban wear. Despite the water conditions, the setting appears to be part of a sports or educational facility, perhaps a school or training center, and the natural light and clothing suggest the photo dates to the latter half of the 20th century. Martin and Jan Manhoff are pictured in a winter scene with snow and clear skies. Martin stands at left with skis and cold weather gear by a fence, while Jan smiles at right in a heavy fur-lined coat and headscarf. Lines like this were common across Soviet cities, especially during shortages or high demand for basics, when even bread, milk, or meat could require long waits. In 1983, Justine Bateman celebrated her 17th birthday with a party full of young TV stars. capturing a pop culture moment that included names who later became major film and television figures. In 1944, actress Ava Gardner was photographed with actor Alex Darcy at Los Angeles' famed Trocadero, both dressed to the nines in the relaxed elegance of Hollywood's golden age. In the 1940s, a woman paused between workouts at a gym, sipping tea or coffee while leaning casually on a 125-pound bar, a rare moment of rest in weight training. A young woman takes part in a Labor Day parade in Lviv, Ukraine, in 1968, joining public May 1st celebrations, common across cities in the former Soviet Union. Reports that public figures, such as Vladimir Putin, use body doubles circulate often, but there is no official confirmation, and no verified evidence shows he uses stand-ins at public events. A woman in the 1950s sits at the edge of her assigned space holding her baby, capturing a quiet, intimate moment between mother and child. In 1932, Dr. Erich Salomon secretly made one of the few photos ever taken inside the U.S. Supreme Court by hiding a camera in a fake plaster cast and pretending his arm was broken. Barack Obama, as a child in the 1960s, appears dressed as a pirate next to his mother, Stanley Ann Dunham, in a relaxed family snapshot that reflects his warm upbringing. In 1928, the Iceman was seen delivering a 25-pound block of ice in Houston, Texas, when ice was essential for keeping food cold before electric refrigerators became common. Around 1982-1983, someone dressed in Puritan-inspired clothing protested revealing swimsuits on Daytona Beach, Florida, in a photo by Keith McManus. Kurt Cobain, an 8th grader in 1981, is seen playing drums. Long before he became Nirvana's singer and guitarist, he was exploring instruments and taking part in school and family arts and music. This 1936 Christmas dinner was plain and modest: potatoes, cabbage, and pie, reflecting the economic reality many families faced during the 1930s and the Great Depression. In July 1946, Rosalind and Jimmy Carter were photographed shortly after their wedding, young and smiling at the start of a marriage that would last more than 7 decades. In 1971, a group of American gunners in South Vietnam held an improvised flag showing the peace symbol, a stark contrast between their military role and a desire to end the war. In 1923, Queen Mary's famous dollhouse was carefully packed and shipped to Windsor Castle, an incredibly detailed miniature royal residence made as a gift, honoring her love of collecting and the arts. This diagonal suspension machine provided a deep, relaxing side stretch, supporting the user at an incline so the lateral muscles could lengthen gently, and it was marketed as a way to relieve tension and improve flexibility. Hooded capes from the Azores, known locally as capas acorianas or capas de bayeta, are traditional women's garments made of thick fabric, usually black wool, with a large hood that covers the head and part of the face. This cartoon, published in Western media in 1939, shows Joseph Stalin and Adolf Hitler symbolically dividing the map of Europe after the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a non-aggression agreement between the Soviet Union and Germany.